Have you ever found yourself trapped in a spiral of negative thoughts? That moment when your mind keeps replaying the same worries, the same doubts, like a broken record you can't turn off. Maybe it's a mistake you made at work, a conversation that didn't go as planned, or a fear about the future that just won't let go. It feels exhausting, doesn't it? Like you're stuck in a mental prison of your own making. But what if I told you there's a way to break free? A tool so powerful, it's been used for centuries to dismantle these self-destructive patterns: Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the heart of what we're exploring today: how Stoic logic can rewire the way you think, giving you the clarity and control to step out of those mental loops for good. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed by negativity. Your mind probably magnified the problem, making it seem bigger and scarier than it actually was. Stoicism teaches us that our thoughts shape our reality, not the other way around. The good news: if your thoughts are the problem, they can also be the solution. By applying Stoic principles, you can train your mind to question those automatic, destructive patterns. Instead of reacting to every negative thought as if it's the absolute truth, you'll learn to pause, examine the logic behind it, and choose a wiser response. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending everything's fine. It's about seeing clearly, acting intentionally, and reclaiming your mental freedom. So how does this actually work? Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into the key Stoic practices that can help you break the cycle of self-sabotage. You'll discover how to separate what you can control from what you can't, why your judgments are often the real source of your suffering, and how to reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical tools you can use today to shift your mindset and take back control. Whether you're dealing with anxiety, frustration, or just the everyday stress of modern life, Stoicism offers a way forward. Ready to transform the way you think? Let's begin. Self-destructive thinking patterns are like invisible chains. They wrap around your mind so quietly you might not even notice they're there until you feel stuck. Rumination, for example, is that exhausting loop where you replay a mistake or worry over and over, as if obsessing could somehow change the past. Catastrophizing takes a small concern and inflates it into a worst-case scenario, like convincing yourself a missed deadline will ruin your career. And then there's self-blame, that harsh inner critic that turns every setback into proof you're not good enough. These patterns don't just happen, they're habits reinforced by repetition until they feel automatic. The ancient Stoic Seneca warned, "A mind untrained in adversity will always be its own worst enemy." And that's the crux. When we let emotions run unchecked, they distort reality, making mountains out of molehills. But why are these cycles so hard to break? Think of your mind like a well-worn path in a forest. The more you walk the same route, dwelling on fears, feeding negativity, the deeper the groove becomes, until it's the default path your thoughts take. Neuroscience backs this up. Repetitive negative thinking literally rewires your brain, strengthening neural pathways that favor pessimism and self-doubt. The irony: you might know these thoughts aren't helpful, but the familiarity of the pattern makes it feel safer than venturing into the unknown. Stoicism interrupts this by asking a simple but radical question: is this thought true? Not does it feel true, but where's the evidence? When you start examining your reactions with logic, the cycle loses its grip. Here's a challenge for you. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, pause and ask, when did this thought first take hold? Maybe it's when you woke up anxious or after a careless comment from a coworker. Tracing it back strips away the power of autopilot thinking, because here's the truth: your mind is a tool, not a tyrant. And just as a muscle grows stronger with exercise, your ability to redirect thoughts improves with practice. The Stoics didn't deny hardship, they trained to meet it with clarity. So what if, instead of fighting the cycle, you simply stepped outside it? The heart of Stoic philosophy lies in one deceptively simple idea: the dichotomy of control. It's the realization that some things are within your power while others simply aren't. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher who turned this concept into a life-changing practice, put it bluntly: some things are up to us and some things are not. Sounds obvious, right? Yet how often do we exhaust ourselves trying to control the uncontrollable? That job interview you agonized over, you could prepare thoroughly, present your best self, but whether the hiring manager prefers your candidacy, that's not yours to decide. The weather ruining your weekend plans, the traffic holding you up, even how others perceive you, these are external events, and no amount of fretting will bend them to your will. Here's where most of us go wrong. We treat everything as if it's negotiable, as if worry alone could tilt the odds in our favor. But Stoicism flips that logic. By clearly separating what's yours to influence, your efforts, your attitude, your choices, from what isn't, you reclaim an astonishing amount of mental energy. Picture someone stuck in traffic, gripping the wheel, muttering at every red light. Now imagine them sitting back, putting on a podcast, accepting that their frustration won't magically clear the road. One is fighting reality, the other is working with it. That shift doesn't just reduce stress, it rewires your relationship with adversity. Try this: grab a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. Label one within my control and the other beyond my control. Now think about what's weighing on you today. Maybe it's a strained friendship you can't force someone else to apologize or change, but you can choose how you show up, whether you extend kindness or set boundaries. Or perhaps it's a health scare you can't dictate test results, but you can commit to lifestyle changes or seek second opinions. The act of sorting these truths does something remarkable. It exposes how much time we spend wrestling with ghosts. The Stoics weren't suggesting we shrug off responsibility or stop caring. They were urging us to invest our effort where it actually makes a difference. When you stop pouring energy into the uncontrollable, you free up reserves for what truly matters: your actions, your growth, your peace. So next time you feel anxiety creeping in, ask yourself, is this mine to solve? If the answer's no, let it pass like clouds in the sky. If it's yes, roll up your sleeves. That's the power of knowing where your agency begins and ends. Imagine holding a snow globe, shake it, and suddenly the water swirls, the flakes dance, and the scene inside becomes impossible to see clearly. That's what happens when we let emotions cloud our judgment. The Stoics called this the Discipline of Assent, the practice of pausing before labeling any event as good or bad, and instead seeing it as it is, free from the distortions of our immediate reactions. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "Take away your opinion about what gives you pain, and you stand pain-free." That's not denial, it's precision. Because suffering doesn't come from the events themselves, but from the stories we attach to them. Take criticism, for example. The reactive mind hears a single negative comment and spirals. They think I'm incompetent. I'll never succeed. Everyone must agree with them. But the Stoic response: strip away the layers of assumption. What actually happened? Someone shared feedback, that's all. Maybe it was constructive, maybe unfair, but your power lies in how you interpret it. Epictetus, who taught Stoicism to everyday people, would ask his students, "Who told you this was a catastrophe?" Your own judgment did. When you stop conflating facts with fears, you regain agency. Here's the practice. Next time you face a setback, describe it in plain, neutral terms. Instead of "my presentation was a disaster," try "3 people looked disengaged during the second slide." Notice the difference. One fuels shame, the other invites problem solving. This isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about creating space between what happens and how you choose to respond. The Stoics weren't passive, they were precise. They knew that calling a rainy day bad doesn't change the weather, it just steals your peace. So let me ask you, what's one situation you've over-dramatized recently? Maybe a friend cancelled plans and you assumed they were avoiding you, or a minor work delay turned into proof you're falling behind. Try revisiting that moment with Stoic clarity. Peel back the layers of judgment until only the facts remain. You'll often find the weight wasn't in the event, it was in the meaning you gave it, and that's something you can always revise. There's a moment in everyone's life when the unexpected knocks you off course: a rejection, a loss, a plan that crumbles despite your best efforts. Your first instinct might be to rage against it, to wish things had gone differently. But what if you could meet that moment with something far more powerful than resistance? The Stoics called it amor fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. It's the radical practice of embracing everything life throws at you, not as a setback but as fuel for growth. Friedrich Nietzsche, who drew heavily from Stoic philosophy, put it this way: "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." Consider Seneca, the Roman statesman and Stoic philosopher. At the height of his influence, he was abruptly exiled to Corsica, accused of an affair with the emperor's sister, a charge likely fabricated for political reasons. For 8 years, he lived in obscurity, far from Rome's power and privilege. But here's what's remarkable. Instead of crumbling, Seneca used that exile to deepen his philosophy, writing some of his most enduring works. He later reflected that those years of isolation were what truly refined his character. What seemed like destruction was actually his education. That's the essence of amor fati, seeing obstacles not as interruptions to your path, but as part of the path. So how do you apply this when life blindsides you? Start by asking, what if this happened for me, not to me? Maybe that job you didn't get would have trapped you in a role that stifled your creativity. Perhaps the relationship that ended was clearing space for someone who aligns with the person you're becoming. Even pain can be a signal, a reminder to slow down, reassess, or strengthen boundaries. The Stoics weren't advocating passivity, they were masters of alchemy, turning adversity into advantage. Think of a recent setback you've struggled with. Now imagine viewing it through the lens of amor fati. If that project failed, what did it teach you about your approach? If someone betrayed your trust, how did it clarify who truly belongs in your inner circle? The practice isn't about pretending hardships don't hurt. It's about trusting that even the sharpest stones can polish you into something stronger. Next time you face a challenge, try whispering this Stoic mantra: "This too is for my good." You might just find the obstacle itself becomes the way forward. What if I told you there's a Stoic exercise that welcomes your worst fears, not to dwell on them, but to disarm them? It's called Premeditatio Malorum, Latin for the premeditation of evils. At first glance, it might sound counterintuitive. Why would anyone choose to imagine disaster? But here's the twist. By mentally rehearsing life's hardest blows, you strip them of their power to shock or paralyze you. Seneca, who practiced this daily, wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." Picture a firefighter running drills for every possible emergency. When the real call comes, they don't freeze, they act. That's the resilience Premeditatio Malorum builds. Let's make this practical. Say you're terrified of public speaking. Your mind races with nightmares. What if I forget my lines? What if the audience laughs at me? Instead of avoiding those thoughts, lean into them. Visualize standing on stage, your mind going blank. And then picture yourself pausing, taking a breath, glancing at your notes and continuing. See the worst-case scenario and your ability to navigate it. Suddenly, it's not a monster lurking in the shadows. It's a challenge you've already faced in your mind. The Stoics weren't masochists, they were strategists. By rehearsing adversity, they turned fear into preparation. Now, think of your own life. What's the worst case your mind keeps circling? Maybe it's losing a job, a relationship ending, or a health scare. Here's the question Seneca would ask: if this happened, what would your next move be? Not how would you fall apart, but how would you rise? That shift from victim to problem solver changes everything, because when you've already walked through the fire in your imagination, the real heat feels less scorching. This practice isn't about expecting doom, it's about trusting in your own resourcefulness. The Stoics knew something modern psychology confirms: we overestimate how much hardship will break us. By confronting fears head-on, you uncover reserves of strength you didn't know you had. So tonight, try this. Spend 5 minutes mentally facing that thing you dread. Then ask yourself, what's the first step I'd take to rebuild? That's how you turn anxiety into armor. We live in a world that constantly whispers, you need more money, more praise, more followers, more things. But the Stoics asked a radically different question. What if freedom comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting what truly nourishes your soul? This is the discipline of desire, the practice of aligning your longings with what's virtuous, attainable, and genuinely meaningful. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, put it bluntly: wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace where everyone's reaching for the same shiny objects. The Stoic walks through that chaos with empty hands, not because they can't afford to buy, but because they've learned the art of not needing to. Take status, for example. Society tells us to chase titles, accolades, and external validation as if they're life's ultimate prizes. But how often does that promotion actually bring the fulfillment we expected? The Stoics observed that desires rooted in others' opinions are like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Contrast that with integrity, an inner compass that doesn't bend to applause or criticism. A person who values character over clout might not make headlines, but they sleep peacefully at night, unshaken by the fickleness of fame. The discipline of desire isn't about deprivation, it's about discernment. It's asking, does this longing expand my humanity or diminish it? Consider how this plays out in everyday life. You might crave a luxury car, believing it'll make you feel successful. But Stoicism would challenge you to dig deeper. Is it the car itself you desire, or the sense of competence, freedom, or respect you think it symbolizes? Often, we're chasing shadows of the real thing. The ancient Stoics practiced something called negative visualization, imagining life without the things they treasured. This wasn't pessimistic, it was liberating. By mentally letting go of possessions, relationships, even health, they discovered a profound truth. Joy isn't contingent on external conditions. Happiness rooted in virtue can't be taken away. So here's an invitation. Pick one desire you've been holding tightly to. Maybe it's the perfect body, the dream job, or a relationship that'll complete you. Now ask yourself, if I never attain this, would I still consider my life worthwhile? The answer reveals whether that desire is serving you or enslaving you. The Stoics weren't against ambition, they were against unexamined ambition. They knew that when we stop conflating wants with needs, we find a different kind of wealth, the ability to enjoy what we have without the constant itch for more. This isn't just philosophy, it's practical psychology. Studies show that materialism correlates with higher anxiety and lower life satisfaction, while gratitude practices akin to Stoic contentment boost well-being. The discipline of desire isn't about shrinking your life, it's about expanding your perspective. When you stop measuring yourself against society's endless benchmarks, you reclaim something precious, the right to define what's enough. So tonight, as you scroll past curated highlight reels or walk down aisles of tempting merchandise, pause and hear Epictetus's challenge. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things he has not, but rejoices for those he has. What if true abundance was never about accumulation, but about appreciation? That shift doesn't just change your desires, it changes your life. Imagine ending your day not with mindless scrolling, but with a quiet conversation with your wisest self. That's the power of Stoic journaling. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor whose private writings became the immortal Meditations, never intended his words for publication. They were his nightly ritual, a way to untangle the day's events with reason rather than emotion. His pages are filled with questions we still wrestle with. Was I too harsh? Did I act with integrity? What part of this is truly mine to carry? 2,000 years later, we can use the same tool to dismantle our own mental clutter. Let's make this practical. Say you had a heated argument with a colleague today. Your instinct might be to replay the tension, feeding frustration. But journaling shifts the focus from what happened to how you processed it. Start with a simple prompt. Was my reaction proportionate to the offense? Write down exactly what was said, no embellishments. Then ask, what assumptions did I make? Did I confuse my interpretation with fact? You might realize you projected meaning onto their words they never intended. That's Stoic logic in action, separating the event from the story you layered onto it. The magic of this practice lies in its structure. Try a 3-step template each night. First, observation. Describe the event neutrally. My boss criticized my report in front of the team. Next, examination. Interrogate your reaction. I felt humiliated, but was the feedback actually unfair, or did my pride amplify it? Finally, realignment. Plan wiser actions. Next time, I'll request specifics privately instead of stewing. This isn't self-criticism, it's precision training for your mind. Why does this work so well? Neuroscience shows that writing engages the prefrontal cortex, the brain's reasoning center, quieting the amygdala's emotional alarms. The Stoics knew this intuitively. By translating chaos into words, you force vague anxieties into the light where they lose their power. Your journal becomes a mirror reflecting patterns you'd otherwise miss, like how often you catastrophize minor setbacks or take responsibility for things beyond your control. Don't wait for perfect moments to begin. Marcus didn't write in elegant prose. His meditations are raw, repetitive, even messy at times. The value isn't in polished entries but in consistent inquiry. Start with 5 minutes tonight. Ask 2 questions. What tested me today, and how could Stoic principles have shifted my response? Over time, you'll spot themes, certain triggers, recurring distortions, and that awareness alone loosens their grip. Think of your journal as a lab where you dissect experiences to find the truths hidden beneath reactions. That argument you replayed all evening, on paper, it might reveal you were really upset about feeling disrespected weeks ago, and today's clash was just the spark. Or that looming deadline stressing you out, writing through it could expose a deeper fear of inadequacy, one that no amount of overtime will soothe. The page doesn't judge, it clarifies. Here's the invitation. Place a notebook by your bed tonight. Before sleep, revisit one interaction through Stoic eyes, not to berate yourself, but to uncover where your judgments veered from reality. Like Marcus, you're not writing for an audience, you're refining your inner dialogue. And just as repeated workouts reshape muscles, these nightly reflections rewire thought patterns. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress one honest sentence at a time. There's a profound difference between having a thought and being that thought, yet most of us blur the line without realizing it. Think of your mind as a river. Negative thoughts are like leaves floating on the surface. You can either jump in, grabbing at every passing leaf until you're soaked and exhausted, or you can stand on the bank, watching them drift by without needing to claim them as your own. This is cognitive distancing, a Stoic superpower that Epictetus described when he said, "You are not your impressions, but the one who observes them." Modern mindfulness calls this meta-awareness, but the principle is ancient. You are the sky, not the storm passing through. Take overthinking, for example. When you're trapped in a loop of what if I fail, what if they judge me, it feels like those thoughts define you, but cognitive distancing shifts the script. Instead of "I'm a failure," you learn to say, "I notice I'm thinking I'm a failure." That tiny pause, that space between observer and thought, changes everything. It's the difference between being stuck in a dark room and flicking on a light to realize you've been holding the key all along. Research from cognitive behavioral therapy shows that this simple act of labeling thoughts, "I'm having the thought that," reduces their emotional grip by up to 50%. The Stoics knew this intuitively. Suffering begins when we confuse mental noise with truth. Here's how to practice it today. The next time anxiety whispers you can't handle this, don't argue with it or swallow it whole. Imagine handing that thought to a neutral third party, a wise friend, even a fictional character like Sherlock Holmes. Ask, would they accept this as evidence, or is it just speculation? You'll often find that thoughts masquerading as facts crumble under scrutiny. The goal isn't to empty your mind, it's to stop mistaking every passing cloud for the weather forecast. Try this experiment. Set a timer for 2 minutes and jot down every thought that arises. Then read them aloud as if they're lines from a play. Notice how absurd some sound when you're not inside them. "They all think I'm incompetent" might become the old mind reading script again. Humor is a powerful tool here. When you can laugh at your mind's melodramas, you've already gained distance. Epictetus urged his students to be the watcher at the gates of your mind, questioning every impression before letting it in. Today, we'd call this cognitive diffusion, the ability to see thoughts as just words, not commands. It's why mindfulness apps teach you to label thoughts: planning, worrying, remembering rather than wrestle with them. The less you fight them, the faster they lose their charge. So tonight, when a thought hooks you, "I'll never get this right," play with perspective. Imagine it written on a leaf floating downstream, or typed on a stranger's phone screen. Would it still feel like yours? That space, that momentary pause, is where Stoic freedom lives. Not in controlling every thought, but in choosing which ones deserve your belief. Imagine looking down at Earth from space, seeing continents as mere shapes, oceans as thin blue lines, cities as tiny specks of light. That's the essence of the Stoic exercise called the view from above, a mental shift so powerful it can dissolve anxiety in an instant. Marcus Aurelius used this practice often, reminding himself, "Keep before your eyes the vastness of time and space, and see how your so-called problems shrink to nothingness." It's not about dismissing your struggles, it's about seeing them in their true proportion. That argument you replayed all night, the mistake that made your face burn with shame. From the cosmic scale, they're barely a whisper in the universe's grand story. Let's make this real. Say you're rushing to catch a train, heart pounding, only to watch it pull away as you reach the platform. Your mind might spiral, "Now my whole day is ruined. Why does this always happen to me?" But here's where the view from above intervenes. Zoom out. In a week, this delay will be a vague memory. In a year, you won't recall it at all. Even the most urgent stressors, a harsh email, a missed appointment, a social slight, rarely leave a mark on the timeline of your life. The Stoics weren't suggesting you ignore practical concerns. They were offering a remedy for the weight we unnecessarily assign to them. This exercise works because it taps into a neurological truth. Our brains are wired to amplify immediate threats. That primal instinct helped our ancestors survive lions and landslides, but today it turns spilled coffee into a crisis. By mentally stepping back, visualizing Earth as a pale blue dot in the cosmos, you activate the brain's rational centers, quieting the amygdala's alarm bells. Astronauts often describe this shift as the overview effect, a profound sense of interconnectedness and perspective gained from seeing our planet suspended in darkness. You don't need a rocket ship to access it, you just need willingness to shift your gaze. Try it now. Close your eyes and picture yourself rising above your current worry. First seeing your neighborhood from 100 feet up, then your city, country, continent, until the entire planet hangs before you like a marble. Notice how borders vanish, how trivial grudges and insecurities seem when measured against the sweep of human history. Marcus wrote, "Think of the substance of your life, a mere moment in time, your body, a tiny particle of the universe." That meeting you're dreading, that criticism you can't shake, how much will they matter when you're 80, reflecting on your life's arc? The power of this practice lies in its flexibility. Use it to diffuse road rage. Will this traffic jam matter at dinner tonight? To soften perfectionism, if this project isn't flawless, will the world notice? Or to ease heartache, has anyone's life truly ended because love didn't go as planned? It's not a call to apathy, but to clarity, a reminder that most of what haunts us is temporary and much of it is optional. One caution: perspective isn't permission to trivialize real pain. Grief, injustice, and trauma deserve their weight, but for the daily irritations we inflate into catastrophes, the view from above is a gentle nudge. This isn't the storm, it's a passing cloud. So next time your mind magnifies a problem, borrow the eyes of an astronaut. See your life as part of something vaster, and watch how the unbearable becomes light enough to carry. History offers us rare individuals who don't just preach principles, they embody them under fire. Take Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who stood alone against tyranny while others compromised. When Julius Caesar marched on Rome, seizing power, Cato refused to bend, even as his allies surrendered one by one. His final act, choosing death over submission, wasn't about theatrics. It was a masterclass in integrity. Cicero wrote of him, he preferred to die free rather than live as a slave. But here's what's often missed: Cato's strength wasn't in his defiance alone. It was in his preparation. Years before crisis struck, he trained his mind through voluntary hardship, sleeping on bare floors, wearing threadbare robes in winter, so when true adversity came, his resolve was unshakable. That's Stoicism in action, building resilience before you need it. Seneca, who witnessed Cato's era, observed, "We are attracted by the examples of great souls, not because they're unreachable, but because they prove what's possible." Think of modern parallels, figures like Nelson Mandela, who turned prison into a crucible for leadership, or Viktor Frankl, who found meaning in Auschwitz's horrors. Their power lies not in superhuman traits, but in choices any of us could make: to respond to injustice with dignity, to channel suffering into purpose. The Stoics called this prosoph, the art of attention to one's inner state. It's what separates those crushed by circumstance from those who reshape it through sheer will. Now consider your own life. Who are the people, historical or contemporary, who demonstrate the mindset you aspire to? Maybe it's a teacher who stayed patient against all odds, a parent who sacrificed quietly, or even a fictional character whose moral compass never wavered. The key is to study them not as distant icons but as blueprints. When Seneca advised, choose a master whose life and speech you admire, he wasn't suggesting worship. He meant dissect their choices. How did they handle betrayal? What did they prioritize when exhausted? Their examples become mental touchstones, ready references when your own resolve wavers. Here's the challenge. Pick one role model this week and trace their response to adversity. Not just the grand gestures, but the daily disciplines. How did they prepare in calm for storms ahead? Because resilience isn't born in crisis, it's revealed there. The Stoics knew we rise to the level of our training, not our intentions. So who trains you, even from across centuries, to meet life with that same unbroken logic? Their legacy isn't in statues or history books, it's in the choices they whisper to you when yours feel impossible. There's a moment in every setback where we face a choice. Will we see ourselves as the injured party, powerless against an unfair world, or will we recognize our own agency in how the story unfolds? Stoicism draws a clear line here. Suffering isn't measured by what happens to you, but by the meaning you assign to it. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming philosophy's most famous teacher, put it bluntly: people are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. That's the antidote to victimhood, not denying hardship, but refusing to let it define you. Take unfair treatment at work, a colleague takes credit for your idea, or a boss passes you over for a promotion you earn. The victim mindset spirals. They're out to get me. I'll never succeed here. It's all politics, but Stoicism interrupts that narrative with a liberating question: what part of this can I own? Maybe you didn't advocate for yourself strongly enough. Perhaps you assumed others would notice your contributions without being asked. This isn't about self-blame, it's about reclaiming power. When you shift from "why is this happening to me" to "how can I grow through this," you transform from a passive target into an active participant in your own life. Consider the ancient story of the Stoic philosopher Zeno, who lost everything in a shipwreck. Stranded in Athens with no possessions, he wandered into a bookstore and discovered the teachings of Socrates. Instead of cursing the sea or fate, he later reflected, "That shipwreck led me to philosophy, the greatest wealth." What if your own setbacks, the betrayals, the rejections, the plans that crumble aren't proof the universe is against you, but invitations to build resilience? The victim clings to the injustice. The Stoic asks, what's next? Here's the challenge. Think of a recent situation where you felt wronged. Now strip away the emotional charge and examine the facts. Did someone actually intend harm, or did they act out of their own ignorance or fear? Have you ever done something similar without malice? This isn't excusing bad behavior. It's refusing to let others' actions dictate your inner world. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire plagued by wars and betrayals, yet he wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's the Stoic edge. When you respond to unfairness with integrity, you break the cycle of victimhood. So where does this mentality hide in your life? Maybe it's blaming traffic for your lateness instead of leaving earlier, or resenting a friend's success instead of examining your own habits. The victim says, "I had no choice." The Stoic replies, "You always have a choice, even if it's just your attitude." That shift doesn't erase pain, but it does illuminate the path forward. Because here's the truth no one tells you: playing the victim is exhausting. It chains you to the past, but taking responsibility, that's where freedom begins. That harsh inner critic, we all know its voice. The one that whispers you always mess things up after a small mistake, or shouts they'll all see you're a fraud when you're about to take a risk. These aren't just passing thoughts, they're mental habits reinforced every time we let them go unchallenged. The Stoics called this prolepsis, the automatic assumptions that shape our reality. But here's the key distinction they made. Just because a thought feels true doesn't mean it is true. Marcus Aurelius, who battled self-doubt despite ruling an empire, wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself, but never cruel." That's the balance, holding yourself accountable without letting criticism become self-flagellation. Take a common destructive script, "I'm such a failure." It's vague, absolute, and collapses an entire person into a single moment. Stoic logic dismantles this by demanding precision. Instead of accepting the label, ask, what exactly did I fail at? Was it within my control? Does this define my future? Epictetus, who taught that words have the power to liberate or enslave us, would challenge you to rewrite that thought. I made a mistake in this specific task. Here's what I learned, and here's how I'll adjust. Notice the shift. One version paralyzes, the other propels you forward. Imagine you're preparing a presentation and stumble over your words. The knee-jerk reaction might be, "I'm terrible at public speaking. I should just avoid it." But the Stoic response would be to dissect that claim. Terrible is an overgeneralization. Maybe you rushed the preparation or skipped rehearsing the transitions. Avoiding it is a surrender, not a solution. A better reframe: this wasn't my best delivery, but I can practice pacing and memorize key sections for next time. The event stays the same, the narrative changes. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal to interrogate his own self-talk. When he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He was modeling how to turn criticism into fuel. Your inner dialogue should function like a skilled coach, not a bully. A coach identifies weaknesses to strengthen them. A bully uses them as proof you'll never measure up. So here's your challenge. What's your go-to negative phrase? Maybe it's, "I don't deserve this opportunity," or "everyone else has it figured out." Now craft its Stoic antidote. For the first, this opportunity is a chance to grow, not a test of my worth. For the second, comparison is a distraction. My only measure is progress from my past self. The goal isn't empty positivity, it's ruthless accuracy, because the truth is rarely as damning or as kind as our instincts suggest. The next time that inner critic pipes up, picture it as a nervous scribe in your mental court, hastily drafting indictments. Your role, the judge who demands evidence. When the scribe declares you'll never succeed, ask for the facts. Has every effort truly led nowhere? Or is this just fear masquerading as prophecy? That's the art of Stoic self-talk, replacing verdicts with questions and condemnation with clear-eyed correction. Because the words you use inside your head don't just describe your world, they create it. Time is the one currency we all receive equally each day, yet how many of us spend it like reckless billionaires, squandering hours on distractions we'll barely remember by sunset? The Stoics had a name for this moment-to-moment awareness, kairos, the opportune time, the present instant where life actually happens. Seneca, in his piercing essay on the shortness of life, laments how we are in the habit of acting as if we had an endless supply of years ahead of us, only to wake one day realizing we've traded our limited days for trivialities. Imagine someone clutching a handful of gold coins, letting them slip through their fingers one by one while staring at the sky. That's what we do when we postpone what matters for someday, or relive yesterday's regrets like scratched records. Consider how much mental space we surrender to hypotheticals, replaying an awkward conversation from last week, fretting over a deadline still days away. Meanwhile, the pot of coffee sits untouched, its aroma fading. The friend sharing the table goes unheard. The morning light filtering through the window goes unnoticed. Procrastination isn't just about laziness, it's a refusal to acknowledge time's fragility. Seneca observed that people are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most extravagant with the one commodity for which it's respectable to be greedy. Every "I'll do it tomorrow" is a tiny betrayal of your potential. Here's the Stoic antidote: treat the present like a perishable gift. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," he wasn't dismissing planning. He was warning against letting the future become a phantom that drains today of its vitality. Think of a musician lost in performance, fingers moving without conscious thought, fully alive in each note. That's kairos in action, total immersion in what's before you. Contrast that with scrolling mindlessly while dinner grows cold, or half listening to a child's story while mentally drafting emails. The Stoics measured wealth not in years lived, but in moments fully claimed. So how do we reclaim this awareness? Start small. Choose one task today, not the most urgent, but the one you've been avoiding out of fear or boredom. Maybe it's finally drafting that proposal, calling a relative you've neglected, or simply sitting still without filling the silence with noise. Do it not just now, but with your whole attention. Seneca's remedy for wasted time was brutal honesty. How much has been stolen by your hopes, how much by your fears? Every distraction you resist, every worry you release, is a coin reclaimed. The next time you catch yourself lost in mental loops, ask, is this how I want to spend my one wild and precious life? Not as a reprimand, but as a gentle nudge back to what's real. The keyboard under your fingers, the rain against the window, the idea tugging at your mind. The past is a ghost, the future a sketch, but this breath, this choice, this is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It's the art of living awake. Think of your mind like a garden. What grows depends on what you allow to take root. Just as weeds choke out healthy plants, irrational beliefs crowd out clarity if left unchecked. The Stoics called this practice of mental weeding emotional hygiene, and few emphasized it more than Musonius Rufus, the first-century philosopher who taught that daily discipline wasn't just for the body but for the mind. He compared nurturing destructive thoughts to feeding a stray dog. The more you reward it with attention, the more it returns. Take social media envy, that pang of inadequacy when someone posts their highlight reel while you're stuck in the blooper reel of life. Your mind whispers their life is perfect. Mine doesn't measure up. Stoic hygiene interrupts this by exposing the illusion. First, recognize that envy is a signal, not a truth. It's pointing to a value you care about, maybe creativity, adventure, or connection, but distorting it through comparison. Next, interrogate the evidence. Is their life truly flawless, or are you comparing your behind the scenes to their curated performance? Marcus Aurelius would have scrolled past those posts with a reminder. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Here's the practice. Set aside 5 minutes tonight to audit your emotional clutter. Grab a notebook and list the recurring thoughts that drain you. Maybe it's "I'll never be as successful as X," or "If I speak up, people will reject me." Now channel Musonius Rufus's rigor. For each belief, ask, is this serving my growth or just my fears? Challenge their validity like a scientist examining flawed data. That thought about needing everyone's approval, test it when has disapproval actually harmed you. The story that you're behind in life, measure it against your own pace, not someone else's race. This isn't about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. The Stoics didn't deny emotions, they cleaned their lenses to see reality clearly. Imagine waking up tomorrow free of just one stale narrative you've carried for years. How much lighter would you feel? Emotional hygiene isn't a one-time purge, it's daily maintenance. Like brushing your teeth to prevent decay, you clear irrational beliefs to protect your peace. So tonight, as you scroll or reflect, catch one thought midstream and ask, does this deserve a place in my mind's garden? The answer might just unearth space for something better to grow. Picture this: you're driving home after a long day when someone cuts you off, missing your bumper by inches. Heat floods your chest, your grip tightens on the wheel, every instinct screams to honk, yell, or worse. But what if, in that explosive moment, you could press an invisible pause button? Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed adversity into wisdom, described this exact space as sacred. Between stimulus and response, there is a gap. In that gap lies our power to choose. That split second, whether it lasts 10 breaths or 10 minutes, is where Stoic practice turns theory into liberation. Road rage is just one example of how autopilot reactions hijack our better judgment. Neuroscience shows these impulses originate in the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, which reacts before the rational prefrontal cortex can weigh in. The Stoic pause isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about creating just enough distance to ask, does this reaction serve me? Imagine two versions of the driver in our scenario. One fuels anger like gasoline on a fire, arriving home shaken and sour. The other takes 3 deep breaths, recognizes the other driver might be rushing to a hospital or simply distracted, and lets the moment pass without renting space in their mind. Both felt the initial surge of adrenaline, only one chose not to be enslaved by it. This practice isn't limited to traffic. Think of the last time a coworker's careless comment made your face flush, or your teenager's eye roll triggered a lecture you later regretted. These are all invitations to insert what modern psychologists call a response delay, a concept the Stoics pioneered 2,000 years earlier. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal to slow his reactions, writing reminders like, "The first reaction isn't the only possible one." He knew that immediate impulses often reflect conditioning, not wisdom. So where could you plant this pause tomorrow? Maybe when your phone pings with a frustrating email, instead of firing back, you step outside for 5 minutes to watch the clouds. Or when your partner forgets an errand, you count to 10 before speaking, long enough to recall their countless remembered gestures. The key is to rehearse these pauses in calm moments so they're accessible when storms hit. Like a musician practicing scales until they become second nature, you're training your mind to default to space rather than spark. Try this tonight. Pick one routine trigger, a child's whining, a slow-moving line, a critical text, and visualize yourself meeting it with deliberate stillness. Notice how different the script feels when you're the author rather than the actor, because here's the secret Epictetus understood. Freedom isn't the absence of challenges, it's the ability to navigate them without losing yourself in the waves. That pause isn't hesitation, it's the moment you reclaim your throne as ruler of your own mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The obstacle is the way, not as empty encouragement, but as practical alchemy." To the Stoic, resistance isn't just something to endure. It's the whetstone that sharpens skill, the fire that tempers character. Think of a blacksmith shaping steel. Without the hammer's blows, the metal remains dull and weak. The same principle applies to your mind. Every setback, a rejected proposal, a financial hiccup, even a harsh critique, contains hidden training value. The Stoics didn't see adversity as an interruption of life. They saw it as life's most effective teacher. Consider a project that collapsed despite your best efforts. The immediate reaction might be frustration or shame, but the Stoic reframe asks, what did this reveal about my preparation? Did I underestimate certain risks? Where did I rely too heavily on luck? Growth hides in these answers. Thomas Edison, though not a Stoic, embodied this mentality when he said of his countless failed experiments, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's the shift from seeing obstacles as dead ends to treating them as diagnostic tools. Here's where Stoicism diverges from modern positivity culture. It doesn't sugarcoat hardship with platitudes like, "everything happens for a reason." Instead, it offers something far more empowering. You get to assign the reason. A missed promotion could mean, "I'm not valued here," or it could mean, "time to build skills that make me undeniable." A broken relationship could prove, "love always fails," or it could highlight, "I now know what boundaries to set." The event stays the same. The meaning you attach to it determines whether it breaks you or builds you. So look at your life right now. What's the recurring challenge you've been resisting? The difficult coworker, the tight budget, the creative block. Now imagine treating it as a custom-designed training module. That colleague's abrasive style, a chance to practice patience and assertive communication. The financial squeeze, a masterclass in distinguishing wants from needs. Even physical pain, as Marcus noted in Meditations, can become material for courage. The key is to stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this preparing me for?" This mindset isn't about denying pain, it's about transmuting it. When the Stoic philosopher Cleans was mocked for drawing water as a manual laborer despite his brilliance, he didn't resent the job. He saw it as strength training for his arms and his character. Your obstacles are no different. That thing you're facing, the one that keeps you up at night, isn't a wall blocking your path. It's the climb that will reveal how strong you've become. So tell me, what current challenge will you repurpose into your next breakthrough? Friendship in Stoicism isn't about collecting acquaintances, it's about curating allies for your soul. Seneca, who wrote extensively on the subject, warned that we become like those we surround ourselves with, comparing toxic relationships to a drop of dye that slowly stains clear water. Think about your own circle. Who among them nudges you toward patience when you're impulsive, or models courage when you're tempted to shrink? Stoic friendship isn't transactional, it's transformational. These are the people who don't just celebrate your victories but challenge your excuses, who reflect back not just who you are but who you could become. Consider the chronic complainer, the friend who turns every coffee date into a litany of grievances. At first, their venting might feel harmless, even bonding. But over time, their lens becomes yours. You start noticing more problems than possibilities, more villains than solutions. Seneca called these ties emotional quicksand. Writing, "To consort with the crowd is harmful. Every vice takes hold through contagion." That doesn't mean abandoning struggling friends. It means recognizing when someone's pain has hardened into a worldview they refuse to examine. The Stoic response. Offer compassion without enrollment in their drama. You might say, "I hear your frustration. What's one small step toward changing this?" If they consistently choose misery over action, that's data about where your energy is best spent. Now flip the script. Recall a friend who embodies what the Stoics called eudaimonia, flourishing through virtue. Maybe it's the one who responds to your setbacks with, "What's the lesson here?" rather than fueling your resentment, or the one whose quiet discipline, showing up early, keeping promises, staying calm under pressure, inspires without preaching. These are the people Seneca urged us to cling to like shipwrecks to a raft. Their influence operates like gravity, pulling you toward your higher self without a word of manipulation. Here's the litmus test. After time with certain people, do you feel drained or energized, smaller or larger, more cynical or more capable? Ancient Stoics practiced periodic friendship audits, asking, "Does this relationship cultivate my humanity or compromise it?" Some bonds pass the test effortlessly: your mentor's wisdom, your workout partner's grit. Others require boundaries, the co-worker who gossips, the relative who weaponizes guilt. Distance isn't disdain, it's stewardship of your limited attention. As Seneca advised his friend Lucilius, show me someone shaped by their associations, and I'll show you their future. This isn't about perfection. Even the best friends will falter, and so will you. The Stoic ideal is progress, not purity, but it does demand honesty about which relationships help you practice virtues like integrity and resilience, and which ones erode them. So tonight, as you scroll through your contacts or plan your week, pause at a few names. Ask not just do I enjoy them, but does this friendship make us both better? The answer might just reveal where your growth is being nurtured and where it's being neglected. Words are currency. Every sentence you speak either invests in truth or squanders energy on noise. Epictetus, who trained his students in the art of disciplined speech, put it bluntly: we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. He wasn't just advocating quietness, he was exposing gossip as a theft of attention, yours and others. Picture this: a colleague leans in, eager to share the latest office scandal. The details are juicy, the speculation electrifying, but beneath the temporary thrill lies a cost: your mental clarity, their reputation, the collective trust that holds teams together. Stoicism draws a line. Speech should serve purpose, not appetite. Consider how gossip operates. It often masquerades as concern. Did you hear about Sarah's project failing? I'm just worried for her, but examine the tone. Is it really empathy or a thinly veiled celebration of someone else's stumble? The Stoics called this thonos, the Greek term for malicious joy in others' misfortunes. Marcus Aurelius warned, the wrongdoer is actually committing the wrong against himself. When you trade in rumors, you're not just harming the subject, you're conditioning your mind to seek drama over substance. Like snacking on candy instead of meals, gossip leaves you malnourished in character. Here's the litmus test Epictetus would prescribe. Before speaking, ask, is this necessary? Is it true? Is it kind? If any answer is no, the words aren't worth your breath. Imagine applying this to a typical workplace scenario. Someone mentions a manager's impending divorce with a smirk. The Stoic response isn't prudish silence, it's redirecting the conversation. That's their private struggle. How's your own workload these days? This isn't avoidance, it's leadership. By refusing to participate, you starve the rumor mill of oxygen. Now turn the lens inward. Think of a recent conversation where you contributed to gossip, even unintentionally. Maybe it was laughing at a snarky comment about a neighbor's parenting, or speculating why a friend's marriage ended. The Stoic remedy isn't guilt, it's awareness. Those words didn't just leave your mouth, they shaped your neural pathways, reinforcing a habit of judgment over curiosity. Every time you choose silence over slander, you're not just protecting others, you're fortifying your own integrity. So here's today's challenge. Identify one conversation you'll deliberately avoid. Maybe it's the group chat dissecting someone's life choices, or the family gathering where relatives relish recounting failures. Your silence will feel awkward at first, like turning down a second drink at a party, but watch what happens. Without your participation, the energy shifts. Others might follow your lead. At the very least, you'll walk away lighter, having traded cheap entertainment for something rarer: self-respect. As Seneca wrote, speech is the mirror of the soul. We become what we articulate. What do you want your words to reflect? Consider the last time you lost an entire afternoon to something trivial: arguing online, rearranging a perfectly tidy drawer, obsessing over a minor typo in an email. Now imagine if, in that moment, someone whispered in your ear, "You will die," not as a threat but as a fact. That's the Stoic practice of Memento Mori, remembering death to illuminate life. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome while staring down his own mortality, wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Not to incite fear, but to sharpen focus. Death isn't morbid to the Stoic. It's the ultimate prioritization tool. Picture two versions of yourself. One spends hours agonizing over a stranger's rude comment, replays a co-worker's offhand remark like a courtroom drama, and postpones calling an old friend because life's too busy. The other, guided by Memento Mori, recognizes that time is the one resource you can't replenish. That version shrugs off the comment, laughs at the remark, and picks up the phone immediately. Both selves face the same circumstances. Only one remembers the sand in the hourglass. The ancient Stoics carried skulls as paperweights, not as grim tokens, but as reminders. This is your deadline. What will you make of the time left? Think of a conflict you're clinging to, maybe a family feud over who said what at last year's holiday dinner. Now zoom out. In 50 years, will this matter? In 5, the practice isn't about dismissing real pain, but distinguishing between wounds and scratches. Seneca observed that people live as if they will never die, and die as if they had never lived. Memento Mori corrects this by asking, if today were your last, would this be how you'd spend it? Not to pressure you into bucket list theatrics, but to gently expose where you've confused urgency with importance. Here's the challenge. Sometime today, pause mid-frustration, when you're fuming in traffic or resentfully cleaning someone else's dishes, and ask, is this how I'd act if I knew my time was limited? You might still choose to clean those dishes, but with a different spirit, not as a chore, but as an act of care. Or you might drop the trivial and text the person you've been meaning to reconnect with. The Stoics didn't use death to scare people into productivity. They used it to wake them up to presence. Your mortality isn't a threat, it's a compass. Every time you remember it, you're handed a rare gift, the chance to ask, am I living or just waiting to live? The answer isn't found in grand gestures, but in the small moments where you choose attention over distraction, love over pride, now over someday. So tell me, what's one thing you'd stop tolerating or start embracing if you truly saw today as finite? That's Memento Mori in action, not fearing the end but honoring the now. As night falls and the world quiets, the Stoics saw more than just the end of a day. They recognized a sacred opportunity to commune with their wisest selves. Seneca, who wrote letters by candlelight long after others slept, described this practice as the most beneficial time for reflection. He believed that nights were made for philosophy, not just rest, urging his students to examine your entire day before sleep claims you. Imagine ending your day not with mindless scrolling, but with a deliberate conversation with yourself, one that doesn't just tally events, but distills wisdom from them. Start with a simple ritual. Take 5 minutes to review the day's ledger, not as a critic, but as an archaeologist sifting for artifacts of growth. Divide your journal into 2 columns, what went well and what taught me. Maybe you handled a difficult client with patience. Note that. Perhaps you snapped at a loved one. Trace what triggered it. The goal isn't self-judgment, it's pattern recognition. Marcus Aurelius filled his meditations with such nightly audits, writing lines like, "When you have trouble getting out of bed, remember, your duty is to be a human being, not a zombie." His journal wasn't for posterity, it was his nightly mental decluttering. Modern science confirms what the Stoics knew. Reflecting before sleep consolidates learning and reduces anxiety. Neuroscientists call this targeted memory reactivation. The brain replays and strengthens experiences you focus on last. So when you journal a small win, stayed calm during the meeting, you're not just recording, you're wiring resilience. When you analyze a misstep, reacted defensively to feedback, you're priming your mind to spot that trigger next time. But Stoic wind downs weren't just about ink and parchment. They involved sensory shifts, dimming lamps, slowing breath, even a cup of warm water, Seneca's caffeine-free alternative to wine. Try this tonight. Power down screens an hour early, sit by a window and watch the stars. As your eyes adjust to the darkness, let your mind do the same. Ask Seneca's question, where did I align with my principles today? Where did I drift? No need for lengthy prose, bullet points suffice. The act itself is the anchor. Now consider your own evenings. What's the transition between your day's chaos and sleep's peace? Maybe it's a playlist that eases your pulse, or a page where you unpack the day's emotional baggage before it follows you into dreams. The Stoics would approve, not because rituals are magic, but because they're deliberate. Every night is a chance to close the ledger with clarity, so dawn finds you lighter, wiser, ready. Here's the invitation. Tonight, borrow a page from Seneca. Put the phone away, grab any notebook, and answer 2 questions. What's one thing I'd repeat tomorrow? And what's one adjustment worth making? No flattery, no cruelty. Just facts, because a day examined isn't just remembered, it's redeemed. Every morning, you make a choice whether to start your day by filling your mind with the world's chaos or carefully selecting what deserves your attention. Epictetus warned that our minds are like fertile soil. The impressions you allow to take root will grow, whether you planted them or not. Think about the last time you absent-mindedly scrolled through news feeds. Each headline, each outrage, each fragment of someone else's crisis seeping into your mental space like ink in water. This isn't just about time wasted. It's about the invisible toll of letting the world's noise become your inner monologue. Consider doom scrolling, that compulsive loop of refreshing bad news, as if more information could somehow neutralize the discomfort. The irony, the more you consume, the more powerless you feel. Ancient Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they understood the danger of unguarded attention. Seneca practiced selective ignorance, deliberately avoiding gossip and sensationalism, writing, "What's the point of knowing everything if it only makes you anxious?" He wasn't advocating apathy, but discernment, recognizing that every piece of information you let in becomes material for your mind to process. Your brain isn't a passive receptacle, it's an active participant, shaping your reality based on what you feed it. Here's the litmus test Epictetus would suggest. After consuming any media, news, social feeds, even conversations, pause and notice your body. Is your breath shallow? Are your shoulders tense? Does your mind feel scattered or focused? Sensations don't lie. That political rant you listened to on your commute, the reality show full of manufactured drama, the group chat dissecting everyone's flaws, they're not neutral entertainment. They're imprinting on your nervous system, training you toward agitation or peace. Try an experiment this week. For one day, track every input that leaves you drained. Maybe it's the morning podcast that spikes your cortisol, the Instagram account that fuels comparison, or even the coworker who turns every lunch break into a complaint session. Now ask, does this serve my clarity or sabotage it? You're not obligated to absorb the world's chaos. The Stoics practiced prosouch, vigilant attention to what they allowed into their mental space. Like a bouncer at a club, you get to decide what crosses the threshold of your awareness. This isn't about building a bubble of positivity, but a fortress of intentionality. Marcus Aurelius had the entire Roman Empire's crises at his fingertips, yet he wrote, "You can rid yourself of many useless things that disturb you, for they lie entirely in your judgment." Imagine applying that to modern inputs. That breaking news alert, unless it requires immediate action, it can wait. The celebrity scandal, irrelevant to your purpose. Even constructive content has diminishing returns. Reading 10 articles on productivity often yields less than implementing one insight. So tonight, as you reach for your phone or remote, pause and hear Seneca's whisper. What are you courting with this attention, anxiety, or wisdom? The answer might just reveal where your peace is leaking and how to reclaim it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who carried the weight of Rome on his shoulders, once wrote something startling in his private journal. How ridiculous and how strange to be surprised at anything that happens in life. Picture him on a battlefield or in a crowded Senate chamber, surely facing relentless absurdity, yet choosing to meet it not with gritted teeth but with quiet laughter. That's Stoic humor in its purest form, not naive optimism, but the deliberate decision to see life's irritations as cosmic jokes rather than personal affronts. When your coffee spills, when your train gets cancelled, when your carefully planned presentation is upstaged by a technical glitch, these aren't just frustrations. They're material for future stories if you have the wit to frame them that way. Take the ancient Stoic practice of Premeditatio Malorum, imagining worst-case scenarios but with a twist. Instead of just preparing for disaster, what if you also prepared to laugh at it? Imagine rehearsing your reaction to a spilled drink by picturing yourself shrugging and saying, "Well, that's a story for dinner tonight." The Roman statesman Seneca, no stranger to misfortune, often joked about his exile, writing letters that treated his banishment as an all-expenses-paid research trip. He wasn't denying the hardship, he was refusing to let it own him. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who use humor to cope with stress recover faster physically and emotionally. The act of finding lightness in chaos doesn't just ease the moment, it rewires your brain to see setbacks as survivable, even laughable. Think of a recent disaster in your own life, a missed flight, a botched recipe, a mortifying typo in an important email. Now fast forward 6 months. Will it feel like a tragedy or just a funny anecdote you tell friends? The Stoics would argue that the difference lies not in the event itself, but in the perspective you cultivate now. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that today's crisis would soon be old news, as forgettable as yesterday's gossip. He wasn't dismissing pain, he was putting it in its proper scale. Here's the challenge: pick one frustration from this week and practice the art of humorous reframing. That traffic jam that made you late, call it your forced meditation session. The rain that ruined your picnic, nature's way of insisting on cozy indoor board games. The key isn't forced positivity, it's recognizing that life's absurdities often look different in hindsight, so why not borrow that clarity early? As Epictetus quipped, if someone tried to carry your luggage without asking, you'd think them rude. Yet we gladly let strangers carry our opinions, then complain when they drop them. The joke's on us when we take minor inconveniences as seriously as major betrayals. Stoic humor isn't about laughing instead of feeling. It's about laughing so you don't drown in the feeling. It's the mental equivalent of shaking a snow globe and watching the chaos settle into something almost beautiful. So tonight, as you replay the day's annoyances, ask yourself, which of these will I chuckle about later? The answer might just turn a groan into a grin, and that's no small thing. It's the difference between weathering life and enjoying the ride. The heart of Stoic philosophy beats around 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, principles so timeless they feel custom-built for modern chaos. Cicero, the Roman statesman who brought Stoicism to the masses, called these virtues the splendor of the soul, the compass by which every decision could be measured. But what do these ancient ideals look like when stripped of togas and translated into today's world? Let's start with wisdom, the cornerstone. To the Stoics, wisdom wasn't just about accumulating knowledge. It was about discernment, knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to invest and when to walk away. Imagine standing in a store, holding that shiny gadget you don't need, your pulse quickening with the thrill of buy now. Wisdom whispers, is this purchase serving my long-term goals or just a fleeting dopamine hit? It's the pause between impulse and action, the quiet voice that separates wants from needs. Courage, in Stoic terms, isn't just facing physical danger. It's the willingness to be uncomfortable for what matters. Think of the entrepreneur risking failure to launch a passion project, or the quiet bravery of setting boundaries with a toxic relative. Seneca called courage the knowledge of what to endure and what to overcome. It's saying no to peer pressure when everyone else is saying yes, or admitting a mistake publicly when your ego screams to hide it. Modern life tests this daily. That difficult conversation you've been avoiding, the vulnerability required to ask for help. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the clarity to act despite it. Then there's justice, often misunderstood as courtroom dramas or abstract ideals. Stoic justice is about relational integrity, treating the barrister with the same respect as the CEO, honoring commitments even when no one's watching. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What isn't good for the hive isn't good for the bee." Today, that might mean refusing to gossip about a coworker or choosing fairness over favoritism in a family dispute. Justice isn't grand gestures, it's the daily practice of seeing others as ends in themselves, not means to your goals. Finally, temperance, the most countercultural virtue in an age of excess. This isn't about deprivation, it's about mastery. Picture scrolling social media for hours, numbing out with junk food, or drowning frustrations in retail therapy. Temperance asks, who's in charge here, you or your appetites? The Stoics weren't ascetics. They simply knew that freedom grows in the space between desire and indulgence. Epictetus, once a slave, understood this intimately. No man is free who isn't master of himself. Now here's the pivotal question. Which of these virtues feels most foreign to your life? Is it wisdom when emotions cloud your choices? Courage when comfort beckons? Justice when self-interest whispers louder? Or temperance when instant gratification glows seductively? Identify that gap and you've found your training ground. Because Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about progression. Each virtue is a muscle. The more you flex it, the stronger it grows. So tonight, as you reflect on your day, ask not just what happened, but how did I practice one of these today? That's how philosophy moves from parchment to practice. Stoic decision-making cuts through the fog of indecision with a razor-sharp question. Does this choice align with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance? While modern advice often reduces big decisions to sterile pros and cons lists, Seneca's letters reveal a more profound method, one that weighs external outcomes against internal integrity. Picture standing at a career crossroads. One path offers a prestigious title but demands moral compromises. The other provides less prestige but aligns with your values. The typical approach might tally salary bumps and commute times, but Stoicism drills deeper. In his letters to Lucilius, Seneca writes, "No wind favors the ship that has no port." Virtue becomes your port, the fixed point that clarifies which opportunities are worth pursuing and which are distractions in disguise. Consider a real-world dilemma. You're offered a promotion that requires relocating your family across the country. A conventional pros and cons list might highlight the higher salary versus the disruption to your children's schooling. But Stoic decision-making layers in virtue-based questions. Does this move cultivate wisdom? Will it expand my skills or just my workload? Does it require courage? Am I fleeing comfort or pursuing growth? Is it just how does this impact my family's well-being beyond finances? Does it reflect temperance? Am I chasing status or meaningful contribution? Suddenly, the decision isn't just about logistics, it's about who you become in the process. Seneca's own life tested this framework. As Nero's advisor, he faced impossible choices: condone tyranny or risk execution. His letters reveal how he dissected these dilemmas, not by asking what's safest, but what preserves my humanity. Modern equivalents abound: a lawyer weighing a high-paying client against their ethics, a teacher choosing between a stable job and a passion project. The Stoic twist: treat every decision as a vote for the person you're aspiring to be. Here's where most of us stumble. We overcomplicate choices by fixating on hypothetical outcomes. What if I fail? What will people think? While ignoring the one certainty: every decision trains your character. Epictetus mocked this paralysis. Do you expect to master virtue without practicing it in the very moments life demands? That career change you've agonized over for months, strip away the noise. Does the work itself align with your values, or are you clinging to fantasies of prestige? Does staying put honor your potential or just your fear? Try this reframe. Next time you're stuck between options, sketch 2 circles. In the inner circle, list virtues the choice would nurture or erode, like honesty if you'd need to hide aspects of your identity at a new job, or courage if launching a business scares you. In the outer circle, note practical factors like salary or location. Notice which circle holds more weight. Often, we inflate outer circle factors because they're measurable, while dismissing the inner circle ones that ultimately define our self-respect. So think of a decision you've overcomplicated. Maybe it's ending a relationship, switching industries, or even something as mundane as whether to confront a friend. Now ask Seneca's defining question: which path leaves me more whole? Not easier, not richer, but more aligned with the person I'm proud to wake up as each morning. The answer won't eliminate risk, but it will eliminate regret, because virtue-centered choices rarely need second-guessing. After all, as the Stoics knew, the right decision isn't about perfect outcomes. It's about becoming someone who can handle any outcome with clarity and grace. Holding onto a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly when he wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Think about that for a moment when you cling to resentment. Who actually suffers? The person who wronged you may have moved on, forgotten the incident entirely, while you're left replaying the scene in your mind like a broken record. The Stoics understood something profound. Anger and grudges don't punish the offender, they imprison the one who carries them. Take the example of a betrayal. Maybe a friend shared your secret, or a colleague took credit for your work. The initial sting is real, and the Stoics wouldn't deny that. But here's where most of us go wrong. We confuse the pain of the event with the ongoing punishment we inflict on ourselves by refusing to let go. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack full of rocks, each one labeled with a past hurt. You might think you're carrying it to remind others of their wrongs, but the only person weighed down is you. The Stoic approach isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about recognizing that your peace is too valuable to trade for bitterness. So what's the alternative? Start by asking yourself a simple but brutal question. What is this grudge costing me? Not in terms of the past, but in the present. The mental energy spent rehearsing arguments, the opportunities missed because you're too guarded, the joy diluted by lingering suspicion. Seneca, no stranger to betrayal, advised, "Anger is like a stone held in your hand. The longer you grip it, the more it burns." Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, isn't about the other person deserving it. It's about you deserving freedom. Try this reframe. Picture the person who wronged you as a teacher in disguise. What did their actions reveal about your boundaries, your resilience, your capacity to choose your response? Every slight carries a lesson, but only if you're willing to unwrap it. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not in a palace of ease, but amid political backstabbing and war. Yet his focus was never on changing others, only on mastering his own mind. That's the Stoic secret. When you stop demanding fairness from the world, you start finding power within yourself. Now think of one grudge you've been nursing, the one that flares up when you least expect it. What would it feel like to lay it down, not because they've apologized, but because you've outgrown the need for their remorse? This isn't weakness, it's the ultimate act of self-command. As Epictetus reminded his students, no one can hurt you unless you permit them to. The moment you stop letting yesterday's wounds dictate today's peace, you reclaim something priceless, your sovereignty over your own happiness. Musonius Rufus, one of the most practical Stoic teachers, called the body the servant of the mind, not as an afterthought, but as the foundation of wisdom. He argued that neglecting physical health wasn't just laziness, it was a failure of philosophy. Imagine a brilliant scholar who can dissect Marcus Aurelius's Meditations but collapses into exhaustion after climbing a flight of stairs. What good is mental clarity if the vessel that carries it crumbles under strain? That's the Stoic view of fitness. Every drop of sweat isn't just building muscle, it's forging discipline that spills into every corner of life. When you push through the last set of squats when your legs scream to quit, you're not just training your body, you're rehearsing how to meet life's larger challenges with the same stubborn resolve. Consider how modern gym culture often fixates on aesthetics, chasing six-pack abs or mirror-ready muscles. The Stoic approach flips this vanity on its head. For them, exercise was never about how you look in a tunic, it was about how you function in the world. Musonius taught that physical training should be as routine as brushing teeth, not for vanity, but because neglect of the body leads to weakness, and weakness invites illness. He even prescribed manual labor, digging, hauling, farming, as the ideal workout, not just for strength, but for humility. There's something profoundly Stoic about the rhythm of hands in soil or the heft of a shovel. It grounds ambition in tangible effort, reminding us that growth is always earned, never bestowed. So how do you translate this into today's world? Start by reframing movement as mental training. That morning jog isn't just cardio, it's a masterclass in enduring discomfort. Yoga isn't just flexibility, it's practicing stillness amid strain. Even the act of choosing water over soda becomes a micro-victory of temperance. The key is intentionality. Seneca, despite his frail health, took daily walks not for leisure but as moving meditation, using the rhythm of his steps to untangle thoughts. Modern science confirms what he sensed. Physical exertion sharpens focus, regulates mood, and builds resilience against stress. Your body isn't separate from your philosophy, it's the workshop where theory becomes action. Here's the challenge: next time you exercise, add a layer of Stoic purpose. As you lift weights, ask, what else am I strengthening right now? Patience, persistence. When you're winded on the treadmill, remind yourself, if I can hold pace here, I can hold focus in that meeting tomorrow. Musonius believed that physical endurance and moral endurance were two sides of the same coin. A body trained to push past fatigue cultivates a mind that pushes past distractions. A heart conditioned to steady itself after exertion learns to steady itself after setbacks. Think of the times you've faced a crisis, personal or professional, and marveled at your own resilience. Chances are that strength didn't appear out of nowhere. It was built rep by rep, step by step, in the daily choices to show up even when motivation waned. That's Stoic fitness, treating every workout as a rehearsal for life's harder tests, because when the stakes are high, when grief, failure, or uncertainty hits, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll default to your training, so lace up not just for the body you want, but for the mind you're building. After all, as Musonius put it, how can a weak house shelter a strong soul? Now take that first step literally. Whether it's a brisk walk, a set of push-ups, or carrying groceries instead of wheeling them, ask, how can I move today not just for strength, but for steadfastness? The answer might just redefine what fitness means to you. Seneca once observed, "We are distracted by distractions from distraction itself," a startlingly modern insight for a philosopher who never touched a smartphone. Imagine him witnessing our current reality, fingers compulsively swiping, eyes darting to notifications, minds fractured across endless tabs and feeds. Digital distraction isn't just stealing our time, it's eroding our capacity for deep thought, the very foundation of Stoic practice. Every ping pulls us away from the present moment, training us to crave constant stimulation rather than cultivate inner stillness. But here's the paradox: technology itself isn't the enemy. Like fire, it's a tool that can warm or burn, depending on how we wield it. The Stoic approach isn't about rejecting devices outright. It's about applying the discipline of detachment to our digital lives. Consider the ritual of the phone reach, that unconscious reflex to check your device during any moment of pause, waiting in line, sitting at a red light, even mid-conversation. Neuroscientists call this slot machine logic, our brains chasing unpredictable rewards through endless scrolling. Seneca warned against such fractured attention 20 centuries ago. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. When you divide your focus across a dozen apps, you're not multitasking, you're shallow living. Each interruption isn't just a minute lost, it's a cognitive toll paid in mental clarity. Studies show it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after a single notification. That's the hidden cost of just quickly checking. The Stoic remedy begins with awareness. For one day, track your digital triggers. Notice when boredom, anxiety, or discomfort sends your hand reaching for escape. Is it during difficult work tasks, lonely evenings, tense family moments? These patterns reveal where technology has become a crutch rather than a tool. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Want to be more present? Start by creating friction between impulse and action. Try leaving your phone in another room during meals, or disabling non-essential notifications like a digital Stoic gatekeeper. The goal isn't deprivation, it's reclaiming sovereignty over your attention. Now, the pivotal question: what's one digital habit quietly draining your mental reserves? Maybe it's doom scrolling before bed, or reflexively opening social media during work breaks. Choose just one to confront this week. Replace it with a Stoic alternative: 5 minutes of journaling instead of morning emails, a walk without your phone instead of lunchtime scrolling. Notice how these small acts of resistance strengthen your focus muscles. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. In our age that includes the power to look at a screen without being pulled into its orbit, the pixels hold no inherent power. We grant it through our surrender. Your attention is the last truly private frontier. Guard it like the Stoics guarded their virtue. Dawn was sacred to the Stoics, not just as a time of day, but as a blank slate for the mind. Marcus Aurelius began his mornings with a ritual so simple yet profound. He'd step outside and whisper to himself, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." Imagine starting your day not by grabbing your phone, but by grounding yourself in that existential gratitude. This wasn't fluffy positivity, it was strategic mental preparation. Before the chaos of the empire could demand his attention, Marcus anchored himself in what truly mattered. Modern mornings often rush us into reaction mode. Alarms snoozed, emails scanned, caffeine gulped, all before we've even asked ourselves, who do I want to be today? The Stoic alternative, a 5-minute virtue check. Picture this. Instead of reaching for your device, you reach for a notebook. Write down one quality you'll embody today, not a goal like finish the report, but a virtue like patience or courage. Then visualize where you'll need it most. Maybe it's staying calm during your toddler's meltdown, or speaking up in a meeting where you usually stay silent. Epictetus called this arming yourself for battle, not against others, but against your own weaker impulses. Here's why this works. Neuroscience shows that setting intentions activates the prefrontal cortex, priming your brain to spot opportunities to act on them. When Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one," he was highlighting the gap between theory and practice. A morning virtue isn't just an idea, it's a lens. Choose generosity, and you'll notice the coworker who needs encouragement. Choose discipline, and that afternoon Netflix binge suddenly feels less automatic. Try this tomorrow. Before your feet hit the floor, name your virtue aloud. Then, borrow a trick from Seneca. Place a coin in your left pocket. Each time you live that virtue, move it to the right. By bedtime, let its position audit your day, not to judge but to witness. Did patience crumble in traffic? That's data for tomorrow's refinement. Did courage emerge when you least expected? That's proof of growth. The Stoics didn't chase perfect days, they chased aligned ones. So tonight, as you wind down, ask yourself, what single quality would transform tomorrow's challenges into opportunities? Not a to-do list for the world, but a to-be list for your soul. Then let dawn find you ready, not just awake, but intentional. We've walked through the Stoic toolkit, 3 transformative levers to dismantle self-destructive thinking. First, the dichotomy of control, separating what's yours to command from what isn't, like a captain steering a ship through storms they didn't create but can navigate. Second, the art of reframing, stripping events of exaggerated judgments and seeing obstacles as training grounds, much like a blacksmith views each strike of the hammer not as punishment, but as precision shaping steel. And finally, presence, the practice of anchoring in the now, whether through morning rituals or evening reflections, so life isn't lost to past regrets or future anxieties. These aren't just ideas, they're muscles. The more you flex them, the stronger they become. Change doesn't demand perfection, just persistence. Maybe today you catch yourself catastrophizing and pause to ask, is this thought true? Perhaps tomorrow you'll face a setback and whisper, this too is for my good. Each time you intervene in an old pattern, you carve a new neural pathway, like a hiker blazing a trail through dense woods. At first, it's unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, but with repetition, what once felt forced becomes second nature. The Stoics knew this intimately. Philosophy wasn't a theory to debate, but a daily discipline to live. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed adversity into wisdom, left us with a razor-sharp directive. First say what you'd be, then do what you have to. It's a call to clarity. Who do you want to become? Someone ruled by fleeting emotions or guided by reasoned choice? The gap between those versions of yourself isn't bridged by grand gestures, but by small, consistent acts of defiance against old habits. So here's your invitation. Pick one tactic from today's discussion, just one, and put it into play before sunset. Maybe it's journaling tonight to dissect a reactive moment, or mentally rehearsing a challenge to disarm its power. Progress begins the moment you move from spectator to participant, and when you do, share your breakthrough below. Tell us how shifting your perspective shifted your experience. Because the most powerful lessons often come not from ancient texts, but from the living practice of people like you, rewriting their stories one Stoic choice at a time. The cycle ends when you decide it does. So what's your first